Oh, are we live? We're live, and this is Ocean Robbins. I didn't realize we were live. Apologies if you've been sitting here watching me wondering when I was going to come on. So great to be here with everybody. I'm Ocean Robbins, co-founder and CEO of Food Revolution Network, here for a whole life action hour with Dr. Susan Peirce Thompson. I will introduce Susan in just a moment, but first, a wee little bit of context about why we are here and what we are up to today, my friends. Well, we're here to talk a little bit with you about the power of values and integrity and purpose and congruency and family and connection and community. And how do you stay true to who you are, what you believe in, what you're committed to, your own health path, even when you're around people you love who might eat and live very differently than you do. And we're here with Dr. Susan Peirce Thompson, one of my dearest friends in the world. A little bit of a bio on Susan. She went from a drug-addicted teenager to a food-addicted young woman. And in a quest to reclaim her life, she got clean. She stopped eating sugar and flour and went from a size 16 to a size 4. And now she is professor of brain and cognitive sciences and president of the Institute for Sustainable Weight Loss and CEO of Bright Line Eating. And she and her team are on a mission to help 1 million people achieve long-term sustainable weight loss. Susan's program utilizes cutting-edge research to explain how the brain blocks weight loss, and more importantly, how we can break free from food addiction. Every day she teaches people to undo the damage that's been done by a toxic food culture and toxic habits so they can lose excess weight and find peace with food. She's the author of multiple New York Times bestselling books, including the landmark Bright Line Eating, and her latest book is On This Bright Day, a year of reflections for lasting food freedom. And Susan is also one of the people I consider like the great lights of our world and one of my dearest friends. Susan, welcome.
Thank you so much, Ocean. It's so good to be here with you.
Yay. So good to have you here. Now, just to give everybody a little bit of a context here, this is a project of Whole Life Club, which is Food Revolution Network's ongoing membership community. And some of the questions that I'll bring into this, I'm going to interview Susan for a bit and we're going to chat, and then I'll bring in some questions from some of our Whole Life Club members. At the end of this, please stay on and I will invite everybody to join Whole Life Club if you're not already a member, with a special opportunity I'll tell you about later. And you can also see info on that on the broadcast page. So this is a great chance because I know a lot of folks are going to say, gosh, I'm inspired. I want to put this into action. I want to stay with this. And Whole Life Club is all about continuity and implementation and optimization. So we'll talk about that. But this is not a big old sales event. This is that we're here to support you in living your best life event. And Susan, I would love to just open up by asking you if you can give people a sense of the core of your work. Can you give us a brief overview of what is Bright Line Eating?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So, Bright Line Eating is a system of eating that I created out of years and years and years of tortured struggle with my own food and my own weight. And as you mentioned in my intro, my bio, before that, years of drug addiction. And just for context, I just want to say, my brain is about as addictable as they come. I started dabbling with drugs when I was 14, but I became hooked bad and went into the weeds far with crystal meth, with crack cocaine, with prostitution. And what I found after I got clean and my addiction turned to food was that food was even harder to kick. And I've learned through my brain science work, neuroscience and just really studying how the brain responds to different drugs of abuse and ultra processed foods is that the reason food is harder to kick is that it's not that it produces a greater dopamine spike in the nucleus accumbens. It's not that it's a drug that hits the brain harder. It's that recovery is harder because our food environment is so toxic right now. We don't have anything like the number or frequency of cues or commercials for drugs of abuse as we have for food. And we don't have anything like the same social pressures to smoke crack as we have, to eat sugar, for example. So I found that food was harder to kick, and I went through a long, winding, convoluted journey of my own through multiple different 12-step programs and tons of therapy and hypnotherapy and group therapy and um, lots of different programs and systems, and lots of academic work as well, including 8 years teaching a college course on the psychology of eating. And I put together Bright Line Eating because, well, Bright Line Eating really put together itself, I got to say. It was called into being in the
Yeah.
universe because there was this big gap for people who have a more addictive relationship with food. In other words, their brain gets more pulled in by these ultra processed foods in our environment, fatty, sugary, floury foods, right? Think ice cream, pizza, potato chips, cookies, all that stuff, right? Whether it's
Yeah.
vegan or not, it's still, I mean, you could have gluten-free, organic, vegan crack cocaine, it would still be crack cocaine, right? So all that food pulls some of us really hard. And there's people for whom, um, when the itch comes to eat something and they scratch that itch by eating it, it calms the system down and they feel good to go for a while and they can get back onto a healthy path relatively easily. And there's other people for whom scratching the itch just makes it itchier. And for those
Yeah.
people, a bright line is just a clear, unambiguous boundary that you don't cross, kind of like someone going from a 3 pack a day smoker to a non-smoker needs to have a bright line for cigarettes. I teach people to do that with food. It's harder with food because you have to eat to live, but you don't have to eat donuts to live. And I teach people what the bright lines are for food. There are no sugar, no flour, eating only meals, not grazing or snacking, and bounding the quantities of food, usually with a digital food scale. And that's not to minimize your quantities or to be on a diet. It's actually to make sure you eat enough of the foods you need to be eating a large amount of, like vegetables, for example, and that you eat the right amount of everything you need to eat in moderation. So that's the program in a nutshell, Ocean.
Amazing, Susan. I just want folks to know that this program works like in an incredible way. There's been research done on various approaches to weight loss, and this is the only program that's been found to consistently work, as well as the semaglutide drugs, actually, but without all the side effects and all the costs, which is dramatic. Um, I, I'm curious, Susan, the holiday season is coming up or we're in it. And for a lot of people, this brings a lot of joy and connection, but it can also bring its own set of stresses. And when we're under stress, we tend to revert to familiar patterns because we have less capacity to challenge ourselves to do something new or innovative or difficult. And sometimes those patterns involve habitual ways of eating. And for a lot of people, habitual ways of eating equals, foods that aren't in our best interests, and in some cases can be very dangerous to our well-being. Can you talk a little bit about strategies for staying grounded and dealing with stress in a way that doesn't lead us to fall into patterns that are ultimately self-destructive?
Yeah, great question, Ocean, and very apropos to this time of year. I was at a holiday party last night with my husband, and I would say there's a couple of big pieces here. One is to really understand how your brain works because, I know someone who really does not have an addictive relationship with food at all. And when the holidays come or she's on a cruise or what have you, she does deviate a little bit from how she normally eats. And she knows it's a short-term temporary thing and she's not going to go overboard. And she knows that about herself. And she also knows that the minute she's back in her home normal environment, she'll snap back effortlessly and immediately to her standard baseline healthy way of eating. And it's really not damaging for her.
Yeah.
She goes from an extremely healthy eater to a mostly healthy eater and then back again. And net, it's fine, right? Then there's people like me who one is too many and a thousand's never enough. We take a bite and we're off to the races. And so you kind of got to know what your brain is like and what the potential consequence is going to be if you deviate. Now, I
Yeah.
think there's consequences from an addiction perspective, but there's also consequences from a value core perspective, right? And I'm sure you have a lot of people in your community who are vegetarian or vegan for whom relaxing that boundary is going to have a huge um psychic cost because it would be such a violation of their value core, right? It's not that they
Hmm.
would maybe, eat something with butter or lard and or whatever in it, and then gobble up the whole rest of the batch. It's more
Yeah.
that they would feel sick in their soul, right? So for whatever reason, if you decide that you want to have a more bright line approach around certain foods, how do you do that when you're stressed? Well, there's sort of the macro level and the micro level of that. So at the macro level, first of all, recognizing that food is really a poor proxy for support and comfort and nourishment. It doesn't actually do a great job of that. It's a great source of fuel, and it does a pretty bad job at all the other things we use it for: entertainment, connection, comfort, uh, release, relaxation. There's so many better ways to get all of those other needs met, right? So
Yeah.
kind of opening your eyes to that and exploring those other ways. Like, oh, food, I keep turning to food for comfort, but don't I actually find a bubble bath or a good walk and talk with a friend way more comforting, right?
Yeah.
So there's that. And then at the micro level, what do you do when you're at the party? Right? Like there
Yeah.
you are. And maybe your tank is empty. Well, there's five things that research shows will replenish your tank, and they are gratitude. So you can notice the stressor and then, breathe and just count, come up with some gratitudes in your mind. You could even excuse yourself to the bathroom and open an app and type in some things you're grateful for so you can work
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
tool.
Hmm.
Meditation could be as simple as a deep breath, honestly, right? You could also excuse yourself to the bathroom and take 2 or 5 minutes to meditate there. Prayer, you know, God help me, that's not my food. That's poison to me.
Yeah.
Not everybody prays, but it's quite effective if you want to try it. Research shows a huge effect. And then social support and then service. So you could actually be in the party, interacting in the party, and turn your attention to, okay, I don't want to eat that stuff. So who looks lonely? Are there glasses that need to be refilled? Are there dishes that need to be done? Are there people whose names I could learn because it's my spouse's company party and you could play a game about it, try to learn three people's names and three things about them and go home at the end of the night feeling not overly stuffed and actually quite fulfilled.
Yeah. Those are some great and diverse tips. And I love that. When I think about the dangers of sliding backwards into unhealthy eating habits, I think there's one more I want to mention, which is, for most of us, an ice cream cone or a donut or, a steak isn't going to kill us, right? But if you think about it, if you fill a bathtub, there's like a right amount of full, and then there's a moment when it could literally flood the bathroom, right? And the equivalent to that metaphor is literally your body can only take so much. The data is that if you have a very, high saturated fat meal and you're susceptible to heart disease, your chances of having a heart attack have gone up in the short term. Like there's only so much abuse our body can take, and we never know when that flood point's going to come. It's not like
Yeah.
we can have blood pressure cuffs, but like you don't really know when you're going to hit that overload. And for many people, that overload may not be a heart attack. It may show up with some other systemic breakdown or a
Yep.
cancer that gets past the body's immune system. And so the reality is that because we don't know, we just want to do the best we can as much as we can. And for
Yeah.
those who are susceptible to um, health crisis, they
Yeah.
may not know it until it's too late. And
Yeah.
that just is an impetus to do the best we can, not to live with a lot of fear. Most of us can handle some stuff. Our bodies are resilient. They're resourceful. They can respond to all kinds of stuff, right? And everybody has a breaking point. And
Yep.
because we don't know what that is, it just behooves us to remember to keep practicing self-care. And at least for me, I think one other piece is self-awareness, like body signals. When I'm listening for how is my body feeling, what sensations am I feeling, like that's sometimes a level that creates a level of presence that helps dial down stress and reactivity. Um, so
Yeah.
um, I'm curious, Susan, another piece here. The holidays tend to be a time when a lot of families come together despite differences. And we've got lots of differences in families, whether it's politics or religion or diet pattern or all kinds of other things. And there's something that can be beautiful about saying we love each other anyway, and we're going to spend time together anyway, and we don't have to be in a silo here. Like family is bigger than ideology or dietary patterns, right? At the same time, it seems sometimes that holding bright lines around food could almost feel antithetical to the intention of connection around food. How do you encourage people to reconcile these seemingly contradictory values of family harmony and food integrity?
Yeah, great question, Ocean. Well, in my experience, families here really run the gamut. There's a broad continuum all the way from one end of the continuum where families, whether they eat that way or not, whether they eat healthy, vegan, bright, or not, uh, they're supportive, right? And they eat maybe mostly healthy, or even if they don't, they're going to go out of their way to ask, what works for you? Can I make sure there's food here you can eat? They're not going to give any pressure. All the way on the other end of the continuum, there are families that are absolutely toxic and obstructionist and wounded and pressure filled. And I hesitate to use the word toxic, so I'm talking about family systems, right? But um, I guess I mean for the person who's trying to do right by their health, right? It can be very, very difficult. And some cultures are more laid back than others, right? There are a lot of cultures where food is absolutely love, and the matriarch of the family may not accept it readily if you say no, thank you to the foods that they've prepared. And they may actually get quite offended and um, emotional and exert a lot of pressure. So the range of challenge there can be quite broad, from very little to an extreme amount. And
Yeah.
what I tend to do is I tend to give the example of an allergy, right? That if you had a peanut allergy that was of the sort that if you encountered any peanut molecules at all, you would go into anaphylactic shock and need an EpiPen and an ambulance ride, right? In order to not die. No matter how much someone was emotionally attached to you eating their peanut butter cookies, you would still say no, thank you. And in a way that if they were pressuring you, you would feel sort of compassion at their ignorance, if you will, that they just didn't understand that they were asking you to do something that was harmful for you. And you would do your best to explain, I can't eat that. It really makes me sick. And I love you. And, is there I'm happy to eat other things. Is there anything else potentially? But you wouldn't cave, right? You wouldn't
Yeah.
cave. And that's how I ask people to orient toward it, right? Once you commit, I've got to eat this way for my health, for my life, for my integrity. It's just the peanut butter metaphor, right? You're not going to eat it no matter how much they want you to.
Yeah. Thank you. I think that in terms of building human connection without being divided about food, one of the things that can be helpful is sort of a little more of a potlucky style,
Yeah.
where people, if you don't expect that there's going to be food there that works for you, and you don't want to, annoy your host, for example, and you're going to a
Yeah.
gathering, bring something,
Yeah.
and maybe enough to share with others so it doesn't feel like you're in your own little corner. You're actually coming to partake in a spirit of generosity. Um, and then also, of course, advanced conversations. A lot of people I find actually like when I'm hosting somebody who has a peanut allergy, I would like them to tell me before they come over for dinner, you know,
Yeah.
that they
Right.
have a peanut allergy. And I will hopefully have the presence to ask in this day and age, do you have any allergies or special food needs I should be aware of? But
Yeah.
I might not. I might forget, and they might not tell me, and then we're in an awkward spot. So letting folks know about your special needs, requests, and preferences,
Yeah.
hopefully in a friendly and respectful way, can be
Yeah.
a way of building connection and not
Yeah.
be setting them up to disappoint you.
Yeah. And this is a way that our society's come a long way in the last 20 years, I would say,
Yeah.
where so many people they're whatever, right? They're keto, they're gluten free, they're whatever they are, right? That and there's so many allergies amongst us in our
Yeah.
society now that society's come a long way in saying, do you have any allergies? Do you have any special food needs? How can I support? That doesn't mean that everyone's going to get it right or that they'll, whatever. You still have to advocate for yourself, but
Yeah.
absolutely a bring some of your own food or even offer, I'm happy to provide for myself if that's more helpful. But yeah, those advanced conversations are key.
Yes, great. By the way, folks, as we're going along here, feel free to post and engage in the comment section on the broadcast page. You can see, you can refresh with the Get the Latest Comments button on there and let us know your aha moments, your takeaways, what you're learning, or your questions. And we'll take a little time later for questions. We have Daria say greetings from sunny and warm Florida. Charlotte said a little earlier, I'm ready for a big dose of SBT's love and wisdom.
Hi.
Janet said Susan is a gem. Lots of wonderful comments. Thanks everybody for chiming in. Again, feel free to post and engage and share what you're learning and thinking and wondering. And what does this mean in your life? Um, Susan, if someone does fall off the wagon over the holidays, do you have any tips for how to navigate that and also how to get back on it again? And I know you wrote a whole book called Resume that focuses on this.
Yeah.
What do we need to know about this?
Yeah. Well, I like to talk about the four S's of resuming. One is speed. Get back on track fast, right at the next meal, at the next bite, if you can. Our brains tend to not like that very much. Our psychology prefers the what the hell effect, which is the I've already blown it, so I might as well eat the whole pint of ice cream and I'll start again on Monday. But you'll feel much better if you get back on track fast. So speed. Social support, especially for those of us who struggle more with our food, um, falling back into destructive eating patterns can be an isolating, self-shaming experience, and that shame spiral can just lead to more eating and it can go downhill very fast. So if you can reach out to someone who understands, who's got a relationship with food like yours, and you can share what happened and feel their acceptance and their compassion, it will make a big difference. So, speed, social support, and you got to seek the lesson. So, you got to look at like, what happened? Was I overly stressed? Have I not been sleeping enough? Seek the lesson. There's usually something to be learned from these breaks. And actually, the book Resume for me came out of, oh, I don't know, 4 years of me being in and out of binging again after years and years and years of food recovery, after bright line eating started and exploded on me. And I was sort of grappling with a whole new level of travel and stressors that I'd never had in my life. I intermittently went back to addictive eating on and off. And it was a very painful time for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
But I sought the lesson each and every time. And with each iteration, I got better and better and better at sticking with my food plan amidst travel and raising three kids and writing books and going online and all of those stressors. And now I can do it. I haven't had sugar or flour in 5 years. And, if you keep seeking the lesson, you will grow in your capacity more and more and more. And then finally, self-compassion. Just, oh my gosh, the food is the hardest. I mean, from a recovering crack addict, I'm telling you, food is harder. It's hard. And the average
Yeah.
non-smoker who used to smoke tried quitting 20, 30 times before it stuck. Like it happens. We backslide sometimes, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
be gentle with yourself, have self-compassion. Those are the four S's.
I love it. Thank you. I want to just highlight something for folks watching here. So Susan is one of the um, most expert people in the world in understanding the neuroscience of food addiction. And she started a company and she's inspired so many people with this. And here she was a number of years back, sliding off the wagon herself and publicly sharing about that with her community and learning from that. And to me, there is so much in that. Like, it shows how hard it is, even when your whole career was based in this, and even when you knew so much, the biology was powerful, right? And it also shows something about, like, for anybody out there who's blaming or shaming yourself, like Susan Peirce Thompson was struggling with this too, right? And so having that compassion, and then also, like, I'm just so moved by the transparency. Because we see a lot of experts out there who preach one thing and do something else, right? The hypocrisy of people that we see in the world is so rampant that it's easy to lose trust in humanity sometimes. And your authenticity through the journey, you're sharing this with us now. The never-ending desire to keep learning and letting yourself be a laboratory, like it's excruciating, and I'm sure at times it felt devastating. And yet there's something so beautiful about that. And I just want to thank you because we're all human. And the notion that we should be perfect is part of, it can be very damaging to our humanity. And when we pedestalize somebody else, we sometimes use that to blame ourselves for not being like that. So here you are making it safer for all of us to be human and to fall, and also getting strategies for getting back up again. And that's just profound. I don't know a lot of other people that have done what you've done, to be honest with you.
Thanks, Ocean. And I just want to say, if there is anyone out there who really struggles with food and you want to see some of what we're talking about, you can
Yeah.
go to brightlineeating.com and there's a link there called vlog. I've been releasing a weekly free video for 9 years or something. And there's a search bar there. If you click on vlog, you can search by different topics. So you could search by holidays or Thanksgiving or whatever and get vlogs with lots of different suggestions. But you could also type in the morning after a binge. And you can see one of those vlogs where I came on camera to say it was vlog day. I had to shoot a video and I was puffy and hungover from binging my brains out the night before. And I made the decision. This was 2015. I think it was the first time that it happened like that. And I just made the decision to just share about it, that I knew I was going to have to scrape myself off the floor and go
Yeah.
on with life. And I knew that I was trying to serve people who might have the same experience. So it's an old video. I haven't watched it in ever, maybe 9 years ago, but I know I shot it. So you can go check it out if you want to.
Okay. Yes, Janet said she made a message of her mess.
Exactly. And that's what we
Yeah.
all do, right? I mean, that's how AA was born. This is, I think, public service 2.0 in this
Yeah.
world and of YouTube and social media is like, figure out your own crazy and then go help people who have the same barrel of monkeys in their life, right?
Yeah.
It's way more helpful than go to school and learn in a textbook the disorders that people have and go sit in an office somewhere. I mean, that has its place too, but really, if you haven't been there, it's harder to walk people on a path out of the cave, right?
Yeah. I want to ask you about decision fatigue. When we're out of our norms and our habits and our patterns, which the holidays tend to be a time when we're not in our regular routines, there's more fresh new decisions to be made. The brain has a limited capacity for new decisions. Maybe we can expand that capacity, but it also still has limits. So can you talk a little bit about that and sort of how do we help keep healthy habits intact and make smart choices given the brain's realities?
Yeah, great topic there. It's so true. Everything you just said is so true. The brain has very limited capacity. The specific part of the brain is actually the anterior cingulate cortex. So it's about 2 inches back from your third eye, right here, just behind the prefrontal cortex. And it's a hub of a lot of important functions in the brain. So we're talking about executive functions, but decision making, but also resisting temptations. So it's literally the seat of what we would call willpower, if you will. Willpower does exist in the brain, and that's where it is in the anterior cingulate cortex. It's also trying to make sure we regulate our emotions appropriately and not blow up on our kids or be a jerk in traffic. It's also helping us with task performance. So, if you're a teacher and you've got an Excel spreadsheet and you're trying to like enter grades or something like that. The problem is this part of the brain proves to be exquisitely sensitive to fatigue. After maybe 15 minutes of hard use, it just sort of goes limp and blood flow doesn't get there very easily. Processing speed slows down to a crawl, and suddenly you find that you've got very little left in your tank for resisting the next temptation or making the next decision. And that's a problem. And the only consistent way that I've found to help people through this unfortunate bottleneck in the brain is to actually circumvent it altogether. I invite people to set up a program that's so structured and so supportive that it would work if they had no willpower at all. It would work if you just took the anterior cingulate cortex out because they're not relying on that. They're not making decisions. Now, this is going to be overkill for most of you, right? I work with people who are in the top 20% of the population in terms of food addiction susceptibility. So 80% of you are going to say, I don't need to have a structure that's that airtight. But for the top 20% of people who have the most addictive relationship with food, what I teach them to do is to literally write down what they're going to eat the night before. So they're not making a decision on the fly. They're using planning networks that are way more in the prefrontal cortex. They're looking in the fridge and seeing what leftovers need to get eaten up. They have a structure of a food plan and they're thinking,
Yeah.
okay, what vegetables, what grain, what fruit am I going to eat at breakfast, lunch, dinner? And they're just setting it up like that. And then in the moment that a meal needs to be eaten, it's really grab and go. It's
Mm,
automaticity is really
yeah.
the key. Now, for the 80% of you who aren't going to write down your food the night before 365 days a year, how do you use this? Well, holiday party time. You could have a cadre of go-to holiday recipes for potlucks where you're like, oh, it's a potluck. Great. I'm making the great big chickpea salad, right?
Hmm.
The Moroccan chickpea grated carrot salad. That's what I
Hmm.
bring when I go to
Hmm.
potlucks because I know if there's nothing there for me to eat, I can be nourished on just that. I've got enough protein, I've got enough nutrients, I'm good to go, right?
Yeah.
So that would be a way of using the concept of automaticity to succeed even during a season of a lot of decision fatigue.
Yes, I like that. And I think that on a daily basis, we have to get to know how our brains work and how we are. But I can say for myself that the best time to plan a meal isn't when I'm hungry and it's time to sit down and eat. Like, you know, and for me, like I work a lot and I love what I do. And often that means that I do not want to take time out in the middle of my busy workday to make lunch, or even to make breakfast before I can get started. Like I live on the West Coast. By the time it's 8 a.m. for me, the world's like run through hours of the workday and I want to dive in. So for me, I make or my wife makes for me, in many cases, breakfast and lunch the night before, and I've got them in containers and then it's just ready to go. And then at least I'm guaranteed I'm going to eat healthy food. And I try to be mindful and take some time to sit and be with the food and take some moments of gratitude. But if I forget or I don't do that, at least I'm getting good stuff in,
Yeah, yeah,
on schedule. And
yeah,
I'm not tempted to go forage for snacks. Typically snacky foods are not the best.
yeah,
Anything that you can grab out of a cupboard and it's instantly ready to eat, the odds are very low that it's going to be high in nutrient value
yeah.
because anything that can sit in a cupboard for a long period of time in a state of readiness is probably that's suspicious right there. Now, nuts and seeds may
Nuts
be
and
an
seeds. Yeah,
exception,
yeah,
fruit is an exception, there are some things, but in general,
yeah,
it's better to plan a little bit if you want to set yourself up for success without having to do the work at the time. Um, so I love that though, in terms of the holidays too, and having like a particular recipe that you can bring to events.
yeah,
That's really cool. I will say when we go camping, we always bring the same like menu. We've been doing it
yeah,
for like 20 years. Because I
yeah,
don't remember when I'm like, what do we bring? Like, oh, we got it. One time we were smart enough to write it down. And now we've got
yeah. What's your
that. Same thing
camping
with
menu,
any good
Ocean? We
recipe,
we all
right?
want to know. We all want to know what your camping recipe is. What's your menu?
Um, Usually there's going to be some oatmeal in the mornings,
Hmm.
with some cinnamon and salt and, other basic things. Usually there's going to be some bread and PB&J type thing. That's me because I do eat flour. It's going to be whole grain, but
Hmm.
or rice crackers or something. But we usually will bring some dehydrated veggies and some canned beans, or dehydrated nowadays they're getting better with freeze-dried things, but
Hmm.
dehydrated veggies, some rice, maybe quinoa is a big one for us. And I might make some kind of a sauce with a curry and bring the basic raw ingredients for that. I don't tend to do a lot of coconut milk, but that's a good camping thing because it just creates a nice sauce and it's high calorie per weight. So a little bit of coconut milk might go in there. Um, we might do, yeah, like it's simple, basic things.
Yeah, sounds
Beans,
delicious. I
rice,
want to go camping.
quinoa,
Let's go camping.
dehydrated veggies, yeah. And yeah, so it's and tea and yeah. Um, I love camping. And you know what? Here's an interesting thing that I think is an interesting lesson for life. When I am when I've used my body well, when I've been physically active,
Mhm.
and I'm present to my relationship to food, something very simple can taste amazing.
Yeah.
And versus when I'm hectic and busy, I need a lot more flavor overload to get past my brain's filters. So how present we are for the relationship with that meal has a great deal to do with our capacity for pleasure. And um, I think there's a lesson here for life. Like, rather than waiting for the world to inundate us with sensation that makes us feel safe and happy, can we be the happiness, be the presence that enables us to meet even very simple things, with an open heart?
Yeah. I love it, Ocean. It's so true. You're reminding me of the paraplegic study, the lottery winners and paraplegics. Do you know
Mm-hmm,
this study
mm-hmm,
from the
mm-hmm,
70s? People always get it wrong. They say that, 6 months. So the idea was that researchers kind of, I don't know, stayed attuned to who was winning the lottery and who was undergoing serious accidents and visited a bunch of people who'd just
mm-hmm.
gotten into bad accidents and gone from able-bodied to quadriplegic overnight, and
Yeah.
people who'd just won massive Powerball lottery winnings. And the folklore is that 6 months later, the paraplegics were happier than the lottery winners. That's not true. There was still both groups had mostly gone back to their baseline level of happiness after 6 months, but there was still a slight differential. But the most interesting thing, I think, is that the people who'd had a physical injury that left them without the functionality that they used to have in their bodies, now rated significantly higher than people who'd won the lottery the simple pleasures of life. They
Mm-hmm,
appreciated
mm-hmm.
more a
Yeah.
good magazine article, a hot cup of coffee, a good conversation with a friend,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so there is something about how the fool's gold of the
Mhm.
glam, of the donut, of the big pot of money, of the whatever, right? It's just not where real life happiness comes from fundamentally.
Yeah. I want to ask you in that light about satiety and hunger. So it seems to me that um, a lot of us in the modern world have actually lost touch with our ability to interpret our body's hunger signals accurately. We
Yep.
may feel a craving for something, and we think that's hunger, but maybe it's not. Like, what is hunger? How do you know if you're feeling hungry? Like, as in, like, your body actually deep down wants food and nourishment versus you want stimulation, you want sensation, you want comfort, you want dopamine hits. Like, what's the difference?
Yeah, it's hard to tell. It's absolutely a thing. So, first of all, let's get into some biology here, some neuroscience. So, there's a couple of different sources of the disruption of the signal between brain and stomach. So, it's true that a lot of people, not all people, a lot of people are losing their ability to regulate their caloric intake. Ergo, we're getting fatter as a population, right? We all know that. Um, and one of the sources of that dysregulation is something called leptin resistance. So,
Yeah.
leptin is the hormone that is keeping all the deer and mammals out there, running wild. It's keeping them from ever gaining weight at all. They never get fat, ever. They don't even get overweight at all, ever. You look out, I mean, unless they're in an amusement park eating our crappy food. Then you might see a fat pigeon or squirrel in an amusement park. But basically leptin is the feedback mechanism that's responsible for weight maintenance within a very narrow band of a range, kind of like as narrow as your temperature range. That's the narrow band that your weight should be maintained. And clearly, that signal is broken in our current food environment. So the way that's working is that leptin, when it's working well, gets released by fat cells when they poof up a little bit. So the berry bushes are ripe and you just killed a wildebeest, you sit and gorge for a bit. Even, 100,000 years ago, people would gorge. They would binge, if you
Yeah.
will. They would eat a
Yeah.
whole bunch, but then they would get a little plump in their fat cells, and those plumped out fat cells would release a bunch of leptin that would circle back to the brain to say, you don't want to eat anymore. You're full, like globally speaking, you're
Hmm.
you're you're full. You need to go use this fuel now to do other things to ensure your survival. You're good on the food count, so go build a hut or go find a mate or go do something else. Go kill another wildebeest. Go get active. So leptin
Right.
says stop eating and go get active at the same time.
And just to distinguish here, that's not a sensation in the stomach.
No,
Like, because I have a
no,
feeling of like I'm full, but that's not what you're talking about. You're talking about
no.
something that's actually happening in the fat cells and then triggering something in the brain.
Yeah, so it would register more as an utter forgetting about food,
Yeah.
like disinterest in food. And
Hmm.
suddenly you find that hours and hours and hours are going by, you're eating very little, and you eat a little and it feels like enough. And you do that for a few days, and
Hmm.
then your fat cells will shrink back down to where they
Hmm.
should be.
Hmm.
And now your brain, after a few days, might go, oh, I kind of feel hungry again. You might get
Hmm.
interested in food again. And that cycle would continue. And your body would do this naturally, kind of like the thermostat in your house, where the
Hmm.
air conditioner, the heat would just kick on for a little while or kick off, and leptin would
Hmm.
just do its thing and keep your weight within that narrow band.
Hmm.
Well, our brain is not seeing leptin anymore. Lots of us, not all of us, but 2/3 of us, maybe 70% now are overweight, living with overweight or obesity, right? So for a lot of us, what's happening is that high baseline insulin levels, high triglycerides, um, insulin, triglycerides, and inflammation. Those are the
Hmm.
three things that are
Hmm.
blocking leptin. And so that mechanism is breaking because the brain can't see leptin. Now you heal your blood work, you bring insulin down, you bring triglycerides down, you bring inflammation down, which is done through, just a few weeks on a very healthy diet, no sugar, no flour, minimal inflammatory animal-based proteins and things like that, or none. You bring your blood work right back into alignment, and suddenly
Yeah.
leptin can come on board. So that's one source. Another source of the dysregulation is artificial sweeteners. So we have all these frankenfoods now that have these fake sugars in them. And what happens is the sweet taste bud hits the tongue. The tongue goes up to the brain and says, "Ooh, big bolus of calories coming." The food slides down the gullet and gets into the stomach, and there's no calories there.
Yeah.
And the stomach goes, "You liar. I'm not trusting you anymore." And boom, the signal is broken, right? So rats that are fed artificial sweeteners actually get fatter long term than rats that are fed actual sugar. Like, we need to stop with the artificial sweeteners. They don't work. So anyway, yeah. So now what you're talking about though is a subtler thing, I think. But what I'm explaining here neurobiologically plays in, because if you're in a world where you've just eaten a huge dinner and your brain is saying, I need to sit on the couch with a bag of chips now, you can check your stomach. It's stuffed. You can feel that it's stuffed. You can feel the stretch receptors in the stomach saying, I'm stuffed. But the elbow still wants to bend, the mouth still wants to chew, the brain still feels inflamed, wanting ice cream, cookies, chips. And that's a combination of leptin resistance and addiction, basically, right? So there's that. And those signals do sometimes show up as I'm hungry. And it could be stress, it could be other cues. It's
Yeah.
very complicated. So how do I tell that I'm hungry? Well, what I do is I eat 3 meals a day that are pre-planned, and I eat them whether I feel hungry or not. I know that that's
Hmm.
not that's not the zeitgeist that everybody loves, where you should be able to listen to your body and get consistent
Yeah.
signals.
Yeah.
My signals just don't work that well. So
Yeah.
I eat the right amount of food, whether my body is saying. Now, I've kind of restored a lot of my signals. So my body is usually saying, oh, I'm a little hungry. Oh, yum, thanks for feeding me. I'm
Hmm.
not fighting against my body. I'm not
Hmm.
disrespecting my body. I'm just not trusting necessarily that my body will always give me reliable signals. It's a
Hmm.
tricky one, Ocean. It's a tricky one. If
Yeah.
it's not, if you're on a structured meal plan and you just ate an hour ago and suddenly you think you're hungry, that's a good signal. Like, well, try drinking a glass of water and journaling a little bit. Like
Hmm.
maybe something else is going on.
Yeah. I also want to say that there's a big difference between ultra processed foods and whole foods in this regard. I find that when I am craving something that's processed, there's a pretty good chance I'm not actually hungry. Like there's
Mm,
something else going on in my body. If I am having a craving for kale and quinoa, there's a good chance I can trust that. Now, that's me, right? We're all
yeah.
our own people, right? But
Yeah.
in general, like,
Yeah.
and I notice I put it through the filter from like, oh, I would use in my case, it's like, some crackers and vegan cheese. Like I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I want that. I want that. And I'm like, put it through a filter, Ocean. Would you also like, some kale and quinoa or some beans? And if I'm like, yes, I would, then I'm like, okay, then maybe you're hungry, right?
Yeah.
Versus like, no, actually, I'll pass.
Yeah. Right.
We've all had kids who are like, I'm starving. And then you're like,
Yeah.
here's some healthy food. Actually, forget it.
Totally.
So we got
Totally.
that part of ourselves. So I think that's one interesting cue. But one of the interesting pieces here is they were all unique. And like your brain is totally different than mine around food. And your brain is
Hmm.
different than it was 5 years ago. Right.
Hmm.
So learning about that and what works for us is unique. And you used a metaphor earlier that when you scratch an itch, like sometimes it makes the itchiness go away. But if you have a mosquito bite and you scratch it, it's actually going to make it more inflamed and you're going to be more itchy. So this is like there's no like perfect formula, itch, scratch or don't scratch. It's like learning what type of itch and
Yeah.
how it registers in your body and what you know about yourself, right?
Yeah.
And
Totally.
sometimes you've got psoriasis and scratching it is the worst thing in the world.
Yeah.
But I've also sat down to meditate and I've got 3 itches. And if I don't scratch them before I start my meditation, I'm going to spend my first 5 minutes just being driven nuts wanting to scratch. So,
Right.
like learning what it is, how
Yeah.
we work is part of the journey and having a lot of compassion for ourselves and curiosity and knowing what the ultimate goal is, which is being healthy, well, present, alive, joyous, fulfilled, and in a body that works well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
Totally.
Just want to say again, everybody, there's a comment section on the broadcast page. Go ahead and refresh the comments using the button provided there if you want to see the latest ones, but also share your takeaways, your aha moments, and your questions. If you have questions for Susan or for this conversation, feel free to bring them in as well. We're headed towards New Year's, and for a lot of people, the new year is a chance to start something fresh, right? New beginnings, new sense of possibility. And we all know that New Year's resolutions rarely stick, but it is kind of, I think of it like a door. And anytime you've got a door, you won't necessarily walk through it and move in, but it's an opportunity. So, you know, what's your relationship to change, to resolutions, to new possibilities? And do you think what's the healthy and not healthy relationship to that?
Great question. So there's some interesting science on this. The New Year's resolution effect is it's called the fresh start effect, and it's actually helpful. It's not entirely worthless. Like I think a lot of us are like, oh yeah, just January 1st, Monday morning, first of the month, whatever. Uh, those types of demarcations on a calendar can provide helpful psychology for transformation. They can help us sort of relegate a mistaken, off the rails, off track, suboptimal way of operating or doing something to the past, to an older version of ourselves. And it can create a clear starting point, which can help us get off our duff because we got to start on that date or whatever and move forward. What I think is important to recognize is that the staying power doesn't come from this fresh start effect. Staying power comes from changing your identity and following a proven system. And so, what I recommend people do is use the momentum of a New Year's resolution type feeling, like wanting to turn over a new leaf, to do some research about what proven system would get you the results you want to achieve. And then asking yourself honestly, what kind of person would you have to be to follow that system? And are you willing to up level to that degree? That's what's going to make it stick. But then absolutely use January 1st to turn a new page. I think that's great.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, and we all have opportunities. I mean, every moment is literally the next moment of the rest of our lives. And so we
That's
have the
freaky, dude.
opportunity. We have the opportunity to make new choices, to create demarcation points. And I think New Year's, honestly, there's nothing like divinely ordained about it, but we as a culture have decided that this is a demarcation point. So you can make it mean whatever you want, you know. And personally, I'm interested in using it as an opportunity to have a reflection time on what the year has been and a chance to start something fresh. We're also, in a time in the world when a lot of people feel a great deal of pessimism about the world around them, and there's a lot of fear about everything from war to climate change to politics to all sorts of different issues where people feel concerned about the state of things, and in some cases a lot of suffering around that. Some people, when they are feeling pain, look to food for comfort. Um, what is a healthy way to relate to, like, are there alternatives besides binging and comfort foods, as we typically so think of them, for comforting ourselves and for cultivating our capacity for resilience in tough times?
Yeah, this is a great question. And it's a bit of a tough one because I don't want to minimize or brush aside the real pain that
Hmm.
people feel over things that are really hard,
Yeah.
you know? Um, and I also know that for myself, I do best when I exercise a lot of agency over the way I think about things. I don't binge on food, and I also really work to not engage in a mental binge about stuff.
Hmm.
The mental binge is not helpful for me. I can take on a very fear-based, disempowered perspective on world affairs or the suffering of a good friend or what have you, or my own life, um, family dynamics, whatever. And it doesn't serve me. It doesn't serve me. There is
Yeah.
a way to look at it that's way more empowered than that. And one of them is actually, I mean, God bless, but just the glass half full perspective. I mean, the reality is that human society has never done as well as it's doing now in keeping the vast majority of its population out of poverty and out of war-torn conditions. We are
Hmm.
crushing it, and we are doing way better than ever before on most of the big metrics of human flourishing. Um, so I tend not to focus on that because the
Mm.
news really highlights things that are not the way I would prefer them to be.
Yeah.
But anyway, human beings are happiest when they focus on what's within their sphere of control, what they can actually do something about. And so, I get busy, with a hammer and a shovel and a phone call and a hug and, you know, a donation and
Mm-hmm.
I make an impact where I can. And I focus on taking exquisite care of myself because I have a big
Mm.
impact on the people that come into contact with me. So it behooves me to keep, myself a fit tool to be of service in this world. The world needs me to do that,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
needs you too.
Yeah. When I was a teenager, I toured the country speaking to school assemblies about the environment and what young people could do to make a difference in the world. We reached hundreds of thousands of students. And in school after school, we would ask, raise your hand if you believe the world will be a better place in a generation with less violence and less pollution. And we'd watch like 1% of the hands go up in the room, which was a fairly chilling experience that our nation's young people were so pessimistic about the future. And I think you would probably see similar data today if you asked that same question in an audience of 1,000 high school students. Um, but what was interesting was that when we spoke to activist groups like environmental clubs or social justice clubs or human rights groups on school campuses, sometimes we get to meet with them separately, ask that same question, and over half the hands would go up in the room. And it really struck me then that that apathy leads to cynicism and action leads to hope.
Hmm.
And so we have this notion that hope comes from thinking things will get better out there as if it's a passive thing. But it may be that hope is actually more intrinsic than that, and that it
Hmm.
comes from what we do and how we live. So if the more worried you are about what's out there, the more important it is to do something in here. Yes, exquisite self-care, but also exquisite constructive, positive contribution, because we can't solve the world's problems, but we can do something, about where we are. We can tell someone we love them. We can make someone a meal. We can nourish ourselves and nourish others. We can do acts of service, and those tend to imbue us with a whole different feeling about the world. The world feels less mean and more safe and beautiful when we make it more safe and beautiful with the choices that we make. So to me, that's just a powerful, powerful
Hmm.
principle. And my dad used to do this. I remember he told me whenever he was worried about money, he would give money to a homeless person or something. Like even if it was $5 or
Yeah,
$2. And
there
it
you
changed
go.
his brain psychology from fear to flow, you know?
Yeah.
And he felt like that it made him happier, whether or not it made him better able to book clients or make a living, I don't know, but it definitely made him happier and put him in a different state of consciousness. So, yeah, these are principles that are pretty powerful. I want to get to a couple of questions we have from folks here. And again, if you have questions, folks, feel free to go ahead and post them on in the comment section. Susie said, how is the how in the moment to remember long-term goal versus short-term satisfaction? How to find the energy for the mundane food prepping sessions or eating repetitive foods to have less food waste?
That's a great question, Susie. The reality is that if you struggle with that a lot, you might have a more addictable brain. One of the hallmarks of addiction is it's fueled by circuits in the brain that have no capacity whatsoever to evaluate future consequences. They don't see it. They cannot. This is how the alcoholic, the drug addict who truly loves their family and their children can go out and use again, even when they're facing a court date where they're going to lose custody of their kids, right? Because those circuits do not see those consequences. So when you're talking about having difficulty keeping long-term goals in sight when you're faced with something yummy right now, right here, the more that's a problem for you, the more that's a hallmark of addiction. So I would really encourage you, Susie, to learn about what kind of brain you have when it comes to food addiction. There's a quiz that you can take at brightlineeating.com at the
You go
very,
to,
very bottom in the
I'll just
footer.
say we have a
Yeah.
link to it actually. If you go to
Oh,
foodrevolution.org/food quiz,
there you go.
there it is.
Foodrevolution.org/food quiz. You
Yeah.
can learn what kind of brain you have. If you're like over us, it's the quiz goes from the results go from 1 to 10. If you're over a 7 or a 7 or higher, I would say, you're going to want to look to a different type of structure for your eating than what you're probably doing now.
Yeah. Thank you. Valerie said 3 years ago, when my daughter was 5 years old, we went to my cousin's house for Thanksgiving. There was not one plant-based dish to eat, even the corn had butter on it. The following year, I brought a salad and a vegan green bean casserole. My daughter and I ate it, and we were the only people that touched it. My cousin even challenged my daughter to answer why she didn't eat cheese, then proceeded to argue with her answer, which was that cow's milk is for cow babies and human milk is for human babies. Disheartening for sure. Since then, we've stayed by ourselves and have only had lovely holiday meals that were plant-based and unconventional. I know these are personal stories, but as I've begun coaching, I know I'm not alone. Others feel they will offend their families if they don't eat the food they're cooked. And others, too, find just staying alone is the peaceful, healthy route. Any advice for the loners and challenged individuals to reframe holiday gatherings with family?
Yeah, that's a great question. And my heart breaks at your stories, and I relate. I know. Oh, God, how hard that can be. I um have given people in my community conversation scripts to use to have planned conversations with people that we love. There's one thing of like the one-off comment with the jerk off in the office that we don't really intend to be friends with, right? And they're ribbing us for how we eat. Like there's some things that maybe we just want to ignore, right? But if it's someone we have a relationship with and that we want to have a relationship with, it can be beneficial to have a structured conversation where you invite them to talk with you. You've taken notes on what you're going to say. You tell them, this conversation is important to me. You matter to me. I've taken notes here. Do you mind if I share for a little bit? And then I'm super curious to hear what you want to say, and I want to listen to you as well. I give a conversation script. I did this in a vlog that I shot. So if you go to brightlineeating.com and then you click on the vlog tab and you type in the word partner, because I think the vlog is titled something like talking with your partner about bright line eating. And in your case, it would be family. But you might want to actually, aside from a family holiday, really explain what you're doing and why. And this conversation script will help you do that in a way that they are likely to hear and not get defensive about. There's kind of a judo move to to helping them be open-minded enough to hear it. So hence the conversation script. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Um, Pam said, exquisite care of my body. The idea is so refreshing and healing. Thank you.
Mm.
Yeah, it is. Well, Susan, we're nearing the end of our time here for this particular conversation. Oh, I do want to answer one more question, though. Janet asked about the chickpea grated carrot recipe and where to find it on the internet. So I think Susan was rather making one up on the spot there, if I'm not mistaken. Um,
Maybe. I think it's actually in the Bright Line Eating Cookbook.
okay,
So yeah, so
cool.
here's a book called The Bright Line Eating Cookbook, and I do
Yeah.
think there's actually a Moroccan chickpea salad
Awesome. And
in
if
here.
you're a member of Whole Life Club, I will say we have over 1,400 amazing whole foods plant-based recipes in there, all searchable. I just did a quick check. There are 221 recipes with chickpeas in them. There are 24 with the word Moroccan in them. So you
There
may
you
not
go.
find the exact recipe Susan just mentioned, which is in that cookbook, but you will find incredible recipes, and you can search in there and you can filter by allergy or by what you have
Wow.
in the fridge and find exactly what you want. And then, yeah, it's just an amazing resource. So it's and that's part of the Whole Life Club. For those of you who are already members, you can check that out. And for those of you not, we'll tell you in a moment about how you can become a member, which is an incredible opportunity. And that's what we'll move to in just a moment here, because here's the thing, folks. Like a lot of people get inspired about healthy eating and want to stick with it, and we know that at the end of the day, it isn't what you know that matters, is what you do, right? And it isn't even what you aspire to that shapes your destiny, it's your habits. It's what you do day in and day out. And the ability to slowly and steadily tweak those habits and make them better and more aligned with our values can literally shift the course of our destiny in utterly profound ways. And we created Whole Life Club because we want to help you to implement, to sustain, and to optimize your healthy lifestyle, to fight disease, and to thrive. So we're approaching the end of our time here with Susan, and then I'm going to invite you all to stay on to learn a little bit more about this program and how it works. If you're not already a member, we want to invite you to join with a special opportunity that's only available if you sign up before midnight tomorrow night. But before you go, Susan, do you have any closing words you want to share for this action hour?
Absolutely, Ocean. I'm just such a fan of Whole Life Club. I'm a fan of community in general. But Whole Life Club is really special because people have been talking here about how isolating it is to be
Yeah.
plant-based and to be
Yeah.
eating as healthy as we want to eat, right? In our society, it's like salmon swimming upstream and, it's dodging and ducking. And when you do it with other people who are committed to the same healthy lifestyle that you are, there's nothing like it. What I find is that being outside in society erodes my resolve. I don't, not because my resolve is weak or because I'm not committed. It's literally just what happens because I'm a human being, I'm a social creature. And what happens is getting cues, either subtle or overt, from other people that what I do is weird and strange, or that I might be in the out group, not the in group with them because of how I eat or behave. It has an impact, and it over time, it makes me want to do what they're doing. It makes me weaker with the food. And if I am backed by a strong community, like the community and Whole Life Club that I feel like I belong to, it
Hmm.
is the antidote to that erosion. It actually means I have a place to retreat and post maybe something like I just tried to have a holiday meal with my cousins and aunt and got all this blowback about my vegan, choices and whatever. And people post their replies. Oh, the same thing happened to me last week. I went to go visit my grandma and she said, blah, blah, blah. And suddenly I'm like warm. I feel like I belong. And it refreshes me to go be with my actual biological family or chosen family. And it also refreshes me to just know that I belong. So, Whole Life Club, I've never seen a repository of recipes like they have. It's absolutely brilliant. They're just so on it, adding recipes all the time. And community, I just don't think in our current food environment, I don't think there's another way to eat well long term other than to belong to an effective, supportive community of people who are like-minded in that way. So I'm a huge fan.
Thank you so much, Susan. And I'm a huge fan of your work, as you know. And again, for anybody who is struggling with food addiction or wonders if you may have high susceptibility to food addiction, go to foodrevolution.org/food quiz, which could be the start of an incredible journey with Susan as you learn to understand how your brain works and how your body works. And also get her book, Bright Line Eating, and jump in because you don't have to figure it out alone. This is a program that works. So Susan, thank you so much for being here and for your brilliant work and your partnership and your friendship. And now we'll let you go. And I want to invite everybody to stay on with me now because I
Thanks,
want you
Ocean.
to know, thank you,
Love
Susan.
ya. Bye.
Love you too. And I want to invite you all to stay on with me. If you're already a member of Whole Life Club, maybe you'll get a little bit more re-inspired about what it is you're part of. And if you're not, please stay on to learn more about it. I so appreciate your time and your attention, and I know that you care enough to get informed and to want to put what you're learning into action. And you know that cancer and heart disease and type 2 diabetes and obesity and misery don't have to be normal. They may be typical, but they don't have to be your fate. You know that something more is possible and that it is practicable. And together, we are changing our menus, we are changing our lives, and we are changing our world. So if you want to support our mission at Food Revolution Network, and if you want to set yourself up for success on your healthy eating path, then I want to invite you to consider joining Whole Life Club, Food Revolution Network's ongoing membership community. And now for this, I want to actually pull up a couple of slides here. So let's go ahead and jump in with a slide or two here. Um, so, Whole Life Club is for people who know that food matters. And so many of us start motivated and have the best of intentions, but then as we move along on the path, maybe we get busy or we get confused or we lose momentum and wind up not making the progress we'd hoped for. But as we know, our lives are on the line, and the status quo is a fast track to immense suffering. Next slide. So we created Whole Life Club because we are sick and tired of seeing people who have the best of intentions fall by the wayside. We want to help you succeed and to really thrive long term. Now we can back to me. Great, thank you. So here's the plan. Every month, Whole Life Club has a theme. This month's theme is healthy eating during the holidays. Next month, we'll focus on women's health. In February, we'll focus on men's health. And I can say that in March, we'll be focusing on herbs and herbalism. And every month has another topic. We've had years of this now. So we've had already in our library deep dives into, dozens and dozens and dozens of critical topics. And as a member, you get premium access to all of the action hours, including the chance to submit questions in advance and ongoing access to the recordings, the transcripts, follow-up action checklists, and many other resources. Next slide. Every week, you'll also get a mouth-watering set of dietitian-created, whole food, plant-based recipes that are nutritious and affordable and easy to prepare and taste amazing and are easily searchable by specific ingredients, by allergies, by lots of other things, so you can get exactly what you want. Next slide. Every week, we also send you another short action video and checklist to help you make progress with your food revolution. Next slide. And each week we offer live events designed to support and inspire your journey. We offer coaching and culinary Q&A sessions where members can ask our team of nutritionists and coaches questions and gain valuable insights. We also have kitchen cooking demos that help you master new recipes and skills, and lots more. And we have community connection calls, which provide a space to build meaningful relationships with like-minded members. And Table Topics is a place for thoughtful discussion on living a healthier and more fulfilling life. These events are all about creating community and accountability and empowerment to help you thrive. Next slide. And of course, you'll join a community of health-minded, passionate people to share insights and receive guidance and spread the food revolution and build friendships even and help you achieve your goals. Next slide. We've worked diligently to make this membership as affordable as possible while having the resources we need to be able to sustainably offer you enormous support. If you're interested in joining us, now is a great time, because if you sign up from this page before midnight tomorrow, you can get a $300 annual discount. That means instead of $497 a year, you'll be paying $197 a year, and it's even better than that because you get your first 30 days as a $1 trial. So that means you can check it out, download, learn all about it, see all of the amazing recipes, check out our incredible library of content, see if it works for you, and I think you're going to love it. But if you don't, you've only spent $1, and you can even get a refund on that if you don't fall in love. So getting a little more specific, here's how it works. So WHOLE is an acronym for Welcoming Healthy Organic Lifestyle Empowerment. We want to dispel confusion by giving you solid and credible wisdom from experts that you can trust. We want to help you cultivate healthy habits so you can make healthy choices on good days and on hard days. When you're feeling chipper and excited and eager to get it going, and when you're stressed, exhausted, and overwhelmed. And we want to end loneliness and isolation by giving you a supportive community to support you and to inspire you. When you join, you get our huge library of more than 1,000 mouth-watering recipes, all of which are easy to sort and search, so you can look for the ingredients you have on hand, you can avoid allergens, and you can maximize nutrition. The recipes are incredibly delicious, they're healthy, and they're easy to prepare. They're affordable, and they're fun to share with friends and loved ones. They also connect to each month's theme. So for example, this month we're featuring recipes that are great for family gatherings and for the holidays. And speaking of questions, let me tell you a little more about the best part of all, I think, which is the community. I don't know if you've ever felt like you had to swim upstream just to do the right thing for your health. The fact is, we live in a toxic food culture. Most of the fast foods and convenience foods around us are also junk foods. So in this context, it's easy for a lot of people to feel lonely or isolated. One of our biggest goals with Whole Life Club is to create a safe and supportive community where you can start conversations on things that matter, where you can get support, where you can feel a sense of belonging, and where you can make new friends. So we created a private custom membership platform. It's not on Facebook, and it lets you start or join conversations on topics that matter to you. So if you're a parent or a grandparent wanting support around raising healthy kids, if you have a spouse or housemate who doesn't eat the way you do, or if you're caring for an aging parent, or you've got a loved one who's fighting a serious disease, if you find a particular time when you tend to get off track, you're going to get a space where you can have kindred spirits who can relate, who can support you, and who can inspire you. The community is moderated by our amazing team of coaches, dietitians, and nutritionists. So if you want to check it out right now while I'm talking about it, you can just click on the button for Whole Life Club that's under this broadcast on our broadcast page. In fact, if you already know this is for you, please feel free to click on over and join in now, and we will be so happy to welcome you. And while this club's only open for registration for this discount price today and tomorrow. I want to make sure you know that if you get in today or tomorrow, you can take advantage of this huge discount. So again, that's a savings of $300 per year. So it'll be $197 per year instead of $497 per year. And you can get a 30-day trial for just $1. And the moment you register, you'll gain instant access to a huge collection of recipes and the moderated member community forum, our entire library of dozens of action hours, and so much more. And you can look forward to having a steady flow of support in good times and in hard times to help you implement and sustain and optimize your healthy lifestyle. Now, I know a lot of people are do-it-yourselfers. Maybe you can relate. Maybe you think this all sounds great. I could probably just do this myself, buy a cookbook, and make it happen. And if that works for you, fantastic. I think self-reliance is a wonderful thing. And what we've seen at Food Revolution Network is that in a toxic food culture, sometimes, a lot of times, people do better with some steady and consistent support. If you try to do it alone, in a sea of socialization and habits and patterns that pull us often in the wrong direction, your chances go down a lot compared to if you get support, when your chances go up a lot of getting success. I don't know a lot of people who have the time to do all the research on their own, but you don't have to. You can lean into what we've learned. You can lean into what we've created. We can lean into the community that we've built and the skills we've honed. And in the process, you can accelerate your own health journey. You shouldn't have to swim upstream all by yourself in order to do the right thing for your health. Whole Life Club will give you a new current that pulls you steadily, clearly in a healthy direction. And keep in mind, we offer a 60-day total satisfaction, better than money back guarantee. So again, if you know you want to join in, just click on the button and you can get instant access for the discount price with the $1 30-day trial. We've been going on with Whole Life Club for about 5 years now, and the feedback we're getting is that this program is a game changer. We're hearing from so many people who feel an instant and palpable sense of relief from the moment they join. So if you are ready to get some support in the journey, or if you want to go to the next level of optimizing your healthy lifestyle for life, then this is for you. You know, the truth is that knowledge without action is weak. And action without knowledge can be reckless. But when you combine action with knowledge, you can become a potent force that changes your life and that helps you to be an agent of change in the world. So that's what we want for you. And that's what this program is. And if you're already a member, fantastic. Thank you so much for being a part of it with us. We have a couple of folks saying that they're already members or wondering how they check if they're a member. If you go to community.foodrevolution.org, you should be able to see right there if you're logged in already as a member. You know, we are getting such incredible feedback from this program. It really feels like out of all of Food Revolution Network's projects and courses and events, this is where we're seeing the deepest change because it's ongoing, because there's that continuity over time. So if that sounds good to you, if you would like steady wind at your back support to help you implement and optimize your healthy lifestyle for life, then please consider joining us and taking advantage of this special opportunity. And whatever you decide, I just want to thank you all so much for joining us in this event and for being a part of the food revolution. Because step by step, one bite at a time, one grocery shopping at a time, one event at a time, we're learning, we're growing, and we're eating in ways that help build a healthier food culture. And together, we're changing our lives and we're changing our world to create more health, more vitality, more love, more beauty. So bless you and thank you for every step you take and every action you take to be a part of this food revolution. Thank you for being with us today. And if you want to join Whole Life Club, I look forward and our whole team looks forward to seeing you there. We wish you a beautiful, thriving day. And I'm signing off now from this Whole Life Action Hour and wishing you a joyous holiday season.